Welcome to How to Buy Your First Dental Practice Challenge. This is episode 4. First 3 episodes have been awesome. You can catch them on HBO, Netflix, or NachoFlix. Just that last one, NachoFlix. If you missed any of the previous episodes, just text challenge to 215-543-6454. I'm so excited for our special guest today. We're talking about how to buy your first dental practice. Just like my awesome daughter's showing there, it's okay to make a mess of your ice pop, get a new ice pop, but making a mess of your dental practice is not okay. And today, our special guests talk about your favorite thing, everyone's favorite thing, money. I want to welcome to How to Buy Your First Dental Practice, Jared Duckett, Bill Ladd, awesome key resource and sponsor of Duckett Ladd, Dental Focus CPAs. You guys are welcome to start your videos whenever you would like. Our goal here, guys, Jared and Bill, I'm going to have you introduce yourself in a second, is to help dentists navigate the biggest decision of their life. So I sell practices. I get to meet dentists at the end of their career before they hang up the handpiece in some big ceremonies, hang up the handpiece. Multiple houses, multiple spouses, just one dental practice. So it's how big a decision it is. So I'm going to start with you, Jared. Orient our audience to what you do on a daily basis. You don't do class 2 fillings every day. I know you wish you did, but tell us, what do you do as dental focused CPAs?
Yeah, Paul, I appreciate you having us. And yeah, we don't do class 2 fillings. We deal with EBITDA every day, but no, what we do, a full service CPA firm that really focuses on dentistry. Really what we do is dive in with dentists on a monthly basis, or really through all phases of the journey that we can talk about, and really just help them understand the business of dentistry, how it works, and how they can really, build that practice, purchase that practice that supports the life they want to live.
And we're going to talk about it over our sitcom length show. But like Dr. Mark Costa says, cash flow is really the oxygen of your business. And that's how serious it is. Bill, we've had a chance to meet in person. You're an awesome dental notcher, key resource and sponsor. Share with us, what do you do on a daily basis with Duckett Ladd as a dental focused CPA?
Yeah, so it's good to see you again, my man. I wish I could see you in person coming up here. I know Jared's going to see you. So hope all is well. Like Jared said, we try to work with dentists at all phases, because most of the time what we find is a lot of time by the time they come to us, it's like somebody who needs a root canal, right? I mean, the pain is visceral. And so they've had issues all along that maybe with a little bit of guidance and help, they might have been able to avoid, kind of like what we're going to be talking about today. So, our goal is to guide people no matter where they are and try to help them create a business that supports the life they want. And we do that through content, products, and services that are designed to help them. And that's what we love doing. And that's how we spend our days.
I like to throw up, we're going to talk about, but if you want to reach out to these awesome key resources and sponsors, we have a great text code to reach out to them. You want to create as many friends in your phone as possible. It's too late to find a plumber when you need a plumber. That's not my joke. It's someone else's joke, right? But you want to have friends in your phone as a business owner, as a person. You want to have resources in your phone. So reach out to the guys. Now, before we dive into this, how a practice gets bought, I always say to really identify a problem, you can't talk about solutions first, talk about how it starts. You're dealing with dentists on a daily basis. Why do you think there's such a lack of understanding of how money works in a dental practice, how profit works? Dental school experience, not enough attention on it. Jared, you work with clients daily, probably awesome people, awesome dentists, but just they haven't learned much about this business aspect. Blake Simon Senek says, what's the why to this, do you think?
I think it's really both of the things you said to a degree. I think first off, they're not taught this in dental school, so they just jump out there very good technically and know dentistry, but they don't understand the business side of dentistry. And, they jump in, maybe they're an associate somewhere and dive in and buy their dental practice, and they don't do any due diligence up first and start educating themselves of how the business side of dentistry works. Then they just jump in, and they're so busy in that practice that they just bought to be, beside the chair and working, blah, 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 that everything else in the business is just sitting here churning and waiting for them till what they get done. And so just that lack of focus on it, combined with not knowing it from dental school, is just the perfect disaster waiting to happen to you.
And I think what you said there's a valuable thing you said as a person, as a business owner. Busyness has nothing to do with profitability. Busyness has nothing to do with work-life balance. Yet at every dental meeting, and maybe even accountants do this too, how's your business going? I'm very busy. And for some reason that becomes a badge of honor when it really shouldn't, right? It should not. It should be profitable. Are you patient-centered? Are you client-centered? Do you get to have a reasonable work-life balance? So that's really just such a key point. Bill, where do you see some of these problems coming from, where dentists who invest $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 in their career, 4 years, are now trying to do what they were trained to do, but they just don't have the fundamental, like what, Billy, like when I pull this out, fundamental understanding of dribbling, passing, and shooting. Where do you see this problem happening, or why?
I think it's almost psychological in a way, because, and accountants are the exact same way. I'm just going to be honest with you. You said a minute ago, you're a business owner. And I don't know that a lot of dentists really think of themselves that way. I think they think of themselves as owning a practice. And through that, I need to work on dentistry. That's the skill set I've developed. I need to work and get better and build this practice and these technical skills. And, I think the business side of it is so shrouded in mystery and complexity, or like Jared said, there's just not enough time to even consider it, that most dentists don't. So they just kind of manage off the checkbook and hope that money's there. And they try to kind of get QuickBooks set up and maybe pull some reports here and there to see how they're doing, but they really don't even know what they're telling them. So I think it's just a lot of, you have to shift your mindset and realize this is an asset. I am a business owner. And, with that kind of responsibility, I got to step my game up and get to where I understand the ins and the outs, because you're affecting a lot of people, not just yourself, but your family, your team members. I mean, all of that stuff, when you step your game up and get to understand that business better, that's going to make everybody's life better. And I think people miss
so
that.
Important, because when I'm in my office and I feel like crying inside, like yesterday, I at least think to myself, because of me and my brother, like 10 people get to feed their families and pay their rent. And that makes me feel good, right? Because there's stuff that, but it's a very serious responsibility. And that's why money should not be some weird thing that we shouldn't talk about, because I'm someone who loves helping people in general. I've done charitable things, but even Habitat for Humanity, someone's got to buy the hammers, right? They don't just give you free hammers. So I think this is a good kickoff to this start. So what we've talked about so far this season is the challenges and danger of working with a dual representation broker, the value of getting your own team, keeping in this basketball analogy, who should be on this team, banks, accountants, brokers, buyer coach. Now we're talking about accountants. So talk about your role on the team in the JFO Just Find Out process. So I'll give you a story. Dr. Guak is 33 years old. She's been an associate for 5 years. She has 3 practices she could buy. They're doing between 800 to 1.2 million. And she has the foresight, or she connects with Dental Notch and says, we're going to talk to you guys. What are some of the things you're talking about at that first stage of them buying this practice? Doesn't all have to be money, but what are just some of the first things you're talking about?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. And, we mentioned the phases that we work, with our dental clients on, and I'll just jump in. And really, this is like phase 1, 2, and 3 kind of combined to a degree, because phase 1 is really, it could be somebody in dental school or maybe an associate who's like, is business ownership right for me? Do I want to own a dental practice? And maybe in your example here, Dr. Guak, I think you said, she's like, yeah, I want to own a dental practice. I know what it means. Boom. She's in phase 2, and phase 2 is what does that dental practice want to look? What do I want that to look like? Just like, I'm going to use the car analogy a lot today. Just like a car, what kind of car do you want to buy? What does that need to look like? Where does it need to be located? What size? All kinds of that stuff. So in your example, if that person were to come to us and say, hey, Jared, hey, Bill, I've got 3 practices. I want to be a dental practice owner. Can you help me look at these 3 practices or 3 cars? I would say, what do you want that car to look like?
Yeah,
What do
great.
you want that practice to look like? Because then we can identify, do these 3, which one or 2 or whatever meet those criteria? And then we dive further and go underneath the hood to see exactly what those 3 practices are like, because they're not created equal.
I love that, Bill. I'm going to go to you next with this one, because the car thing was great. I've never thought about it this way. So a couple things is, it's a car you're going to drive, the one car for 3 decades. So you can't just get a new one as easy. And, I think dentists sometimes think a smaller car has less risk, less money. And I don't want this big $1.5 million practice. But Bill, give us some insight, because dentists get mesmerized by the number, which is normal, right? Paul, I can never buy a $1.6 million practice. I can never afford that. I say, well, actually, that has less risk. Tell us a little bit about what you are talking about with your clients at this stage of them thinking about buying a dental practice, coming to you saying, I got these 3 cars that I can look at.
I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. And a lot of times it just kind of depends on what their ultimate goals are. And, some of them, the lower value, the lower price practice may be right for them, just kind of depending on what they're looking for. But there are opportunities if, you can get where the financing is lined out and you can make sense where you can slide into a practice that's pretty well established and in good shape and has, a good healthy mix of insurance and the right fee for service type stuff. And you can pay a little bit more for that and have a little bit steadier stream perhaps, and probably have a lot less stress with the exception of the fact you're going to have a higher debt service. Right. So, I mean, it really goes back to what Jared said is what are you trying to accomplish and what do you want? Because you may have that, but it may geographically be a non-starter for you, or you may not want your kids to go to that school district. So there's just so many factors that, what we try to do, and we learned this concept from Rob Montgomery, is really try to understand what do people want, and then try to help connect the dots to say you have those three practices. No practice is going to be perfect, but which one of those appears to check the most boxes? And is this the right practice for you? That's our phase 3. We've identified practice. Is it the right one for you? And there's just a lot of, criteria that go into having that discussion, and each person's going to be different. And, that's kind of an individualized discussion.
You go to accountants for numbers and they start talking about people. And sometimes you go to attorneys for documents, they start talking about numbers. And that's why I just want to constantly share that the transition team you develop is so key. Not only do you have the right people, but they can pass the ball to each other when they know when to stay in their lane, when to cross over. So let's just talk about a very dentist thing for a second. We got $1 million practice, Dr. Nacho's House of Dentistry. We got Dr. Sally Salsa's practice, both do $1 million. Sally profits $250. Dr. Nacho profits $400. Dentists are always concerned about getting ripped off, people in general. So just give us some fundamental asking price stuff. So, what are some of the things you're seeing in this space, maybe more than me, asking prices? Are they higher? Are they lower? What are some tips you can give our viewers when they're seeing these practices to know, no, that's pretty normal, right? That's not expensive. You guys come to Philadelphia, Alves, and a margarita is $14. That's pretty normal, right? Maybe where you live, it's $8. I'm glad. Maybe in New York City, it's 25. So, Jared, share a little insight on the numbers and asking prices, some thoughts you have.
Yeah, so I think the most important number when you're looking at any dental practice, most important number is not top line, it's not collections. It's all about cash flow. Yes. What is this thing going to cash flow? And what we look at most of the time, and you talk about it all the time, Dr. Nacho, is what's the net? If you're looking on a doctor coming in and buying out another doctor in a transaction like that, is what's the net on that thing? And what the net is basically your collections minus your overhead without, the owner doctor, no compensation or anything to them. What's that net? And then typically, 1.5 or 2 times net, somewhere in there is a good deal, but a lot of times people always, and you say this all the time, they always look at that collections,
Right.
And they're always like, 70% of collections or 72% or whatever. Well, again, not all practices are equal, just in your example.
If we could go back in time to 2010, I'll buy all your drinks in Philadelphia, Jared, because if I had met people like you, I wouldn't have overpaid over $30,000 because I paid based on collections. I didn't know any better. It was 10 years ago. There were no podcasts, but I'm hoping someone's listening here where the net profit, the profit, not the production percentage, is key. Bill, where do you see, when clients are coming to you and these brokers are saying it's worth 100% of collections, it's worth this, where do you start the conversation to start digging into this notch bite? We have some really nice people in the chat, one who I know, I know they would like this because brokers can easily get you twisted because, they're trying to get the best deal for their seller. That's right. You develop your own team. Tell us a little bit about some of your conversation points with them.
Well, I don't necessarily feel like this is a situation where you have to have a combative negotiations. I think there is the possibility to get to where you both could have the desire to create as much of a win-win as possible. Now, not everybody's going to be happy, and probably both sides. So I think that's number one, a mindset is it's either going to be a competitive negotiation or it's going to be more of a collaborative. And I think the quicker you can get an understanding of which one you're in, the quicker you can kind of start adapting to that. Now, we tend to say numbers will tell a story and they can be very objective. And so, when we start with a client, I had a client that came in today last month that was looking at buying a practice, and he had in his mind that this is what he was going to pay. And, the client had dictated this number, and he thought, yeah, that's pretty reasonable. When you do the math, it doesn't make any sense. And when I brought this to the client's attention, they went back and it didn't make sense. The deal fell apart. He kept looking and found one that was much cheaper, and it kind of blew me away how much more reasonably priced he got it. So, I'm not going to sit here and say that everything's about nickel and diming, but there's foundational issues sometimes in practices where they're just overvalued. And if you start with that mindset that, hey, the price is what it is, then, and that's kind of that scarcity mentality, then you're probably going to run an issue where you might overpay. So just get help somebody looking at it, giving you an idea.
Embracing conflict in this process doesn't have to be anti-collaborative. It just can be sharing your why. Because the seller, I want to tell you, I work with sellers, they want to sell their practice. So sometimes you can say something like, how about this? I know your asking price is $900,000 based on bank financing. And, you guys, I don't know if you guys know this, but you get a lot of blame in front of patients. Sometimes I'm like, my accountant says I can't let this go this long. My accountant didn't say it. I kind of just made it up, right? So you could use the same thing. My accountant said it makes a lot more sense based on the cash flow for this to be $800,000. How about that? And that's why when you just work with good people, they're going to coach you on how to do this, because the seller does want to get to the finish line, but there's nobody really guiding this process. I mean, you guys must think at some point, it's kind of nacho nuts how all this works, right? You got someone like out of dental school, never trained in business, kind of getting the loan to buy this $1 million business without really a lot of checks and balances. And that's why we're doing this show, How to Buy Your First Dental Practice, because you probably have it, Jared, unless you do have clients who basically regretted the practice they bought and now they have to try to fix it. Do you guys deal with those people?
Sure. I mean, you said at the beginning, what'd you say? 2 spouses, 1 practice, or you had something else you said before that?
Multiple houses, multiple spouses, 1 practice.
That's right. And you buy that practice. I mean, you are married to that practice. I mean, it is hard to just get out of that practice. So yeah, you need to do due diligence before you get in. And the cash flow, what you're bringing home, doesn't need to be a surprise. And I'll say this, a lot of times you see, let's say you have an associate who's making, I'll throw it out there, $175,000 working at another private practice. And they want to be a practice owner, and they go out and they see a practice that's, let's say 700,000, 650, whatever. And they're like, I'm going to buy that practice because I know once I buy that practice, oh man, I'm going to be making so much money. And then once you dig down deep, you're like, hey, actually, after you buy the practice, it's not a very good practice. Underneath the hood, it's got high overhead. And then you got your practice debt. So at the end of the day, you're going to be bringing home 150. And they're like, well, wait a minute, that's less than what I'm making now. Yes. That's the stuff that doesn't need to be a surprise.
I was searching, when you go like to somewhere and you want to like know how the people talk. I made this for you guys because I listened to this great podcast here about seller discretionary earnings, Built to Sell Radio. I don't know if you guys caught an episode where Mark Costas interviewed the founder of Built to Sell Radio. And, EBITDA, that's why I say, what's the most important key performance indicator of a practice, right? Is it EBITDA, crown prep taper, or something else? And it is something else. And that's the number of times you feel like crying inside a day as a practice owner. And you're going to want to cry inside if this seller discretionary earnings is not high enough. So what is the difference between EBITDA and kind of a solo GP and what they earn in profit? Is there a difference? This is really one of the most popular questions. If I can get each of you to say, what's your definition of EBITDA? Just to let you know, if you ask a dentist what their definition of occlusion is, you're going to get 15 different answers, okay? But just if I said, hey, Jared, people are going to watch in on this. We're going to show this thousands of times. They want to know what does Jared Duckett say EBITDA is? What is that?
Well, I mean, truly EBITDA, and you're an accounting geek out here on you, but EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That's a mouthful of crap, which is basically, you look at the financial statement and you do all these add backs, and see what actual true earnings are. That to me gets a little convoluted when you're looking at a 1 doctor practice or 2 doctor practice. It just gets all mixed up. What I want to do is take this accounting crap out of it and get very simple and be like, if I'm going to buy a practice, what am I going to bring home? What cash do I have? That's the seller discretionary earnings that you're talking about. What money do I have to spend on practice debt, to spend on things that I want to run through my practice that are for me? That's what I want to know. The EBITDA to me just gets way convoluted.
It's not really appropriate for a solo GP. It's just
Right.
I'm going to ask you, Bill, because this is another thing dentists do poorly. They want to buy a practice and they think they're going to improve it, but they never improve it. So this seller discretionary earnings, what you're going to bring home, I often say, this is what I say about you guys, talk to Bill and Jared so they will tell you what it's going to feel like when you own this practice. And they go, I'm going to double the revenue. I say, don't say that, because what would it feel like if you were this dentist? Do you find clients have some misconceptions around this, Bill, and sort of their ability to grow a practice quickly, even if the old doc is not doing much? Because I find that to be a challenge where I say, hey, if they're making 120 grand off this practice, you better be able to live a life off 120 grand. How do you navigate those type of conversations with your clients?
So I think sometimes they can, but a lot of times we see they do struggle, because what happens is a lot of times they'll inherit people, and they'll inherit process, and they'll inherit location or signage or whatever the case may be. Maybe not signage, but they're inheriting all this stuff, and some of that is probably not maximized in order to allow you to take it to scale and to make more money. So in other words, what you might do is you might go out and take some CE on some kind of implant placement or whatever, and you think you're going to automatically go up. Well, you may not have a system to generate those kind of patients. Your marketing may be garbage. So it's easier said than done. But I think a lot of times it comes down to, you have to have the processes in place from the minute a patient finds you wherever to where they come into the experience they have all the way through. You have to have that dialed in as a new practice owner, really, before I think it becomes a lot easier to start taking your collections to scale, is how I look at it.
It's so key, because it's like, if I wanted to get fit back into my wedding suit, I would have to have a realistic timeline to get back into that wedding suit. And it's not doesn't mean I'm out of shape, but I just think sometimes dentists who are purchasing practices think the owner dentist is a worse dentist than they are, and they're not. They're actually a pretty good dentist. And this is the practice they've created, and maybe they're older and they're just tired of fighting with patients over doing crowns, so they may become conservative. But in general, that's what you're buying. So if you don't like the profit off that practice, don't buy it. If you have a lifestyle that needs to bring in 250, don't buy one for 125. This has happened over and over again with both startups and acquisitions. So I think it's just so key to be realistic about what's possible out there. As we wrap up here, I want to ask you guys a couple of last questions. In this process, when people work with you, where do you look at the numbers of the practice, and then who's usually the next person you're connecting them to on the advisor thing? Let's say I'm Dr. Guac. Okay, guys, we're pretty confident about this CPA stuff, the money, but I don't know anybody else on the team. Who else are you guys connecting with on the team? Not just one person. Who are some other people that connect with Lad and Duckett each day?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just jump in and say two people. I think it's a dental focused attorney, and then a dental focused lender too.
Yeah,
I think those are the two biggest things that you need to try. If you've got a practice, if you're Dr. Guac and you've got a practice, get with us, help you analyze that practice, look underneath the hood, but actually start getting that attorney and also that lender in place, because they're all key to have on your board of directors.
I think that's great. Now, and Bill, why can't you just go to Joe's Bank down the street and get your dental practice loan? What are some of the risks of doing that? If you just say, I don't need a dental focused bank, I'll just go down the street to where I do my banking.
I think most of them, it's like us, they just don't understand the business of dentistry and how it looks when somebody comes in, with student loan debt. And I think they kind of look at it through the tunnel vision of checking off boxes as to whether it meets the criteria of a loan. If you find somebody who understands the business of dentistry and have put a specialty, and a lot of times they are buried in bigger banks. There's a person who does a lot of, they're active in the dental community, and they know the business and they understand the debt load people have and how to kind of balance that with the practice and understanding how to look at the financials the practice is going to kick off, and maybe even a pro forma.
Yeah.
It's just different. They just look at it differently because again, most bankers, if they don't understand, they're just gonna be checking a box for liquidity or this or cash flow earnings. And they're just not gonna understand because it's not there.
A good talking point for your clients. It's like an oral surgeon wanting to do a denture. You know, they're specialized in their own things, and we don't know this as consumers, but they don't really even want to do it because you're like, someone with $500,000 worth of debt doesn't have to put any money down on $1 million loan. Probably to some bankers that just literally blows their mind out, right? But dental focused bankers are like, yep, that's just Tuesday for us, right? So I think that's key. You guys have shared such awesome value. The goal of this is to create these sitcom length shows because a huge fan, Family Ties, Cheers. What was your favorite sitcom from the 80s, Jared?
Ooh, I don't know. I've got to go to Seinfeld. That's not from the 80s, but that's my favorite.
The tail end of the 80s.
Yeah.
Seinfeld, I think, was 92, but maybe late 80s.
Oh, 89. It started in 89.
Thanks.
No way.
Yeah.
Family Ties is my favorite. Family Ties is one of my favorite.
How about Perfect Strangers?
I love that. Balky
Bartakamus? Yeah. Was that in Philly or was that in New York? I can't remember. Or maybe Chicago.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was well, you guys are too awesome. Really appreciate it. How can people reach out to you guys, Jared, if they say, hey, first, how can they reach out to you and you guys kind of connect with people in a complimentary way to just find out about that?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to get with this, go to ducketlad.com. You know, go to the top right and click on the work together that comes into our CRM. We'll reach out, see how we can help, and connect on social media as well, but really just go to the website.
Also, I appreciate you guys are doing such great work out there, sharing how exciting it truly is, how exciting EBITDA is. You guys should dress up as EBITDA and STE superheroes for Halloween. To my crew watching in, people watching in later, we're here to help you. Just text us NTT to 215-543-6454 or visit dentalnachos.com. Thanks so much, guys.